Welcome back, viewers, to the latest researches and news. We have major development that we will share with you in this video. Viewers, this might be one of the clearest signs yet of where things are actually heading. According to the latest reports, the Tigray government has established an 11-member central command specifically to lead and make decisions for the coming war. At nearly the same time, Amhara forces have reportedly restructured their own organization to operate jointly with allied forces. Today, we're going to lay out the complete picture who's on this new command, what it tells us about Tigray's intentions, how Fano is aligning alongside it, and what the Ethiopian National Defense Force has been doing to prepare on its own side. This is a long, detailed breakdown, so let's get straight into it. According to the latest updates, the Tigray government has reportedly established an 11-member central command to lead and make decisions in the war. This central command reportedly includes 5 members from the civil administration, including Ato Getachew Asefa, and 6 members from the military leadership. This body is said to be the one that will lead the coming war. The phrase "the coming war" is doing a lot of work here. This isn't described as a body meant to manage an ongoing defensive posture or oversee negotiations. It's explicitly framed as the leadership structure for a war that hasn't fully started yet but is anticipated. Establishing a dedicated command structure in advance rather than reacting to events as they unfold is generally a sign of serious organized preparation, not improvisation. According to the reports, the civil administration side of this central command includes Dr. Debretsion Gebremichael, the chairman of the Tigray People's Liberation Front and Tigray's regional leader, whom we've referenced many times throughout our coverage, Mrs. Fitwa Gebrexiaba, also referred to as Mongerino, Ato Emmanuel Asefa, Dr. Abraham Testi, and Ato Getachew Asefa. Including Debretsion himself at the top of this list confirms that Tigray's highest political authority is directly embedded within this war command structure, rather than operating separately from it. This tells us that political leadership and military decision-making are being formally merged into a single body, a structure typically built for a period of active or imminent conflict, where political and military decisions need to move together quickly, rather than through separate, slower channels. On the military side, the reported members include Lieutenant General Fisher Kidano, Brigadier General Haile Selassie Jomai, Major General Watterson Wolde-Jogges, Brigadier General Megbe Haile, reportedly a nickname or alias, Major General Bihen Negash, and Major General Nefe Judge. 6 senior military officers spanning the ranks of Major General, Brigadier General, and Lieutenant General represent a genuinely senior and experienced military leadership branch. The presence of a reported nickname or alias for one of the members, Brigadier General Megbe Haile, is also worth noting. Using an alias for a senior commander in public reporting is sometimes a deliberate security measure to reduce the risk of that individual being specifically targeted or tracked. Bringing 5 civil administrators and 6 senior military officers together into a single 11-member command is a clear structural signal. This isn't a wartime cabinet meeting called occasionally for updates. It's a standing, dedicated command body. Structures like this are typically established when a conflict is expected to be sustained and significant, not a short, limited skirmish. This lines up directly with everything else we've been covering: the Tigray People Liberation Front's decisive phase statement, the youth mobilization drive, and the returning fighters we've reported on repeatedly. Taken together, This central command looks like the organizational capstone on top of all that mobilization activity, the leadership structure built specifically to direct it once fighting begins in earnest. In connection with this, it's been reported that Amhara forces have also made organizational changes in preparation for the coming war. This is described as a structure in which Amhara forces will operate together with combined allied forces as a single unified force, even while maintaining a different, separate war front. This is a significant detail, and it connects directly to everything we've told you about the Simdo Alliance and the broader Timurid coalition. Operating as one army while maintaining a different war front suggests a deliberately coordinated but geographically distinct structure rather than merging into a single command post with the Tigray Defense Force. Amhara forces appear to be organizing their own unified command that can act in coordination with Tigray's central command without necessarily being under the same direct leadership. This is a fairly sophisticated coalition structure, coordinated in strategy and timing, but still operationally distinct on the ground, which would allow both sides to maintain their own separate political identities and leadership while still fighting toward shared objectives. So, what does all of this tell us about what comes next? Based on everything we've covered across our recent videos, the likely objective for Tigray's Central Command and the aligned Amhara forces centers on the same core issues we've discussed repeatedly regaining Western Tigray, specifically Wilkate, Humera, and Selemt, securing the Raya Alamata corridor in the south, and doing so while coordinating pressure across multiple fronts through the Simdo and Timurid alliances rather than concentrating everything on a single front. The formation of a dedicated central command suggests this objective is now being pursued with a formal long-term command structure behind it, rather than through the more loosely coordinated troop movements and individual unit actions we've been reporting on up to this point. This represents a shift from tactical, front-by-front engagements toward what looks like a centrally directed strategic campaign. Now let's look at what the Ethiopian National Defense Force has been doing to prepare on its own side, based on everything we've reported recently. First, there's the major troop buildup we told you about, large numbers of soldiers moving by the busload toward the Tigray border, with positions now established along the Afar, Tigray, and Amhara borders simultaneously, essentially surrounding Tigray's perimeter from multiple directions. Second, there is the phased air campaign we broke down in detail. A first phase focused on striking weapons storage and logistics infrastructure, followed by a second, more aggressive phase specifically targeting heavy weapons like tanks, artillery, and armored vehicles wherever they are detected, aimed at preventing Tigrayan forces from concentrating or moving that equipment freely. Third, there's the forced conscription campaign we've shown you happening in Addis Ababa, large numbers of people being loaded into buses and taken to military training camps against their will, a pattern that closely echoes what we saw during the 2020 to 2022 war. Fourth, there are the continuing near-daily drone strikes across Tigray, including the reported strike on a school's ICT center in Gejet town, and strikes in Raya Azeba Woreda and Ndabaguna, both of which we've covered in detail. When you line up all four of these elements, troop buildup, a structured air campaign, forced conscription to replenish manpower, and sustained daily strikes, this doesn't look like a government simply maintaining a defensive posture. It looks like preparation across every major category needed to sustain a larger, longer conflict: manpower, air power, logistics disruption, and encirclement. At the same time, we've also told you about Obasanjo's surprise visit to Mekelle, Tigray's 5 stated conditions for peace talks, and reports of Tigray deploying drone jammers and spoofing systems to counter these same Ethiopian strikes. This is really the central tension running through everything we've covered recently. On one track, we have a very real high-level diplomatic effort: Obasanjo carrying Tigray's conditions back to the federal government with a promised return within a week or 2. On the other track, we now have Tigray formally establishing a dedicated war command, Amhara forces restructuring for coordinated combined operations, and the Ethiopian National Defense Force continuing troop buildups, a phased air campaign, and forced conscription all happening simultaneously, not sequentially. Both sides appear to be doing 2 things at once: publicly signaling openness to dialogue, while privately and organizationally preparing for the possibility that dialogue fails. If we had to summarize where this leaves us, it's this: neither side appears willing to bet entirely on diplomacy succeeding. Tigray's new central command and Amhara's restructured joint force suggest a coordinated coalition preparing to fight a sustained multi-front campaign if talks fail. The Ethiopian National Defense Forces troop buildup, phased air campaign, and conscription drive suggest the federal government is preparing for exactly the same possibility from its own side. The presence of active diplomacy, Obasanjo's visit, Tigray's stated conditions, means war isn't guaranteed. But the scale and formality of preparation now visible on both sides means that if these talks do fail, both sides appear to already have the command structures, manpower, and strategic groundwork in place to move quickly into a much larger conflict, rather than needing to build that capacity from scratch. So here's the complete picture. Tigray has formed an 11-member central command, combining its top political and military leadership, specifically to direct what's being described as the coming war. Amhara forces have restructured to operate as a unified, coordinated force alongside them, while maintaining a separate front. And on the other side, the Ethiopian National Defense Force has been building up troops along multiple borders, running a phased air campaign, conscripting new soldiers, and carrying out near-daily strikes, all while diplomatic efforts through Obasanjo continue in parallel. Both sides are talking peace and preparing for war at the same time. Which of those 2 tracks wins out is something we'll only know in the days and weeks ahead, and we'll be watching every part of it closely for you. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss what happens next.